Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final mentoring session for Unimasters Cohort 7. Super excited to have our co-founder, Anthony Boschi, talk to us today a little bit about the philosophy of Web 3.0 and deep dive into that and really understand the mindset shift that this new era is bringing forth. Anthony is a philosophy, a psychology and neuroscience graduate. He's also a TEDx speaker. You can look him up on Google and check out his talk. Very, very cool session that he had about the power of choice. And yeah, we've been building some amazing stuff at Unit. So excited to hear what Anthony has to share with us today. So I'm going to hand over the floor to Anthony to steal your hearts with a little bit of philosophy.
Thank you so much, Anne. That's more than kind and more than generous. So thank you for that introduction. It's such a pleasure to be here to close out our cohort 7, guys. This is wild. It's so great to be here to share this experience with you. And as we lean into the holidays, we hope to celebrate each other and reflect on quite an eventful year, to say the least. So I would love for this to even be a communal discussion, and for anyone that has any insights, questions throughout, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to them. But yeah, something I just want to talk about and present before I really get started with the philosophy of Web3 is I want to ask a couple questions just for you to ponder throughout the presentation, even afterwards, and even as we, again, lean into the holidays, just something that we can really contemplate and think about to make sure that we're catalyzing the shift in the most benevolent way with Web3, blockchain, emerging tech, and all of the liking. And that would be essentially, what is money? You know, really, what is money? What is value? These are terms that we throw around very often. If you're familiar with Robert Breedlove, he is obsessed with this question of what is money. It's literally what his show is about, and I would highly recommend checking that out as a preface. But I think that there's so many definitions for money. You know, we've described it as a medium of exchange, for example, and I want to explain or describe one of the best examples or best definitions that I've heard of what is money, and that is that it's an index of comparative value. So essentially, it's an aggregate score of a free marketplace that issues and details the fact that what I'm willing to pay for something and what you're willing to pay for something, we come together, and the actual dollar amount that's reflected is what it's going to be purchased at. It's supply and demand in its most raw form. We go to a coffee shop. I'm willing to pay $2 for a coffee. You're willing to pay $2. Money represents that value, of course, in monetary terms. And leading into this question of value, from money into value, I would also like us to question how many hours are worth your money. You know, how many hours of time, when you look at the duration of your lifetime, and if you were to retrospectively, if you could look back and say, you know, over the amount of time that I've worked for money, you know, how much of it was it worth? What is my life value? And can it be reflected in monetary terms? Of course not. We're human, but we act as if sometimes that is so. And I don't mean to all be a lazy millennial and say, oh, we shouldn't work and we shouldn't work for money or anything of the liking. Of course, it's beyond necessary, but I just think it can't be the highest value in our hierarchy of values, because money is shown to be more of a means to an end than a fulfilling act in and of itself. So throughout the talk, when it comes to philosophy, I'm going to present 3 different philosophers from more so back in the day, and just try to revive some of their insights. And we're going to be taking a look at some people that may have been ahead of their time, where their ideas may have worked in theory back then, but never really worked in practice. So it's going to be really interesting to see some of these insights and ideas percolate in real time as we move forward to this new shift in the future economy. Here we can evaluate a space where some of these insights could be implemented more effectively. And in this talk, we're stepping back from the tech for just a brief moment. I know a lot of the tech people out there who are all about the consensus mechanisms and so forth really want to dive in even further, and I highly recommend we do so. We're all learning on that process. However, we're just going to step back from the tech for a quick moment and realize our humanity so that we can dive into the thought of those before us as we evolve, and making sure we're doing so properly. So the first philosopher that I want to introduce is someone that is very popular, very well known. It's our friend Lao Tzu from 600 BC. It's wild to think that we're still talking about him and his work thousands of years later, and they may be ever so relevant for a variety of reasons. I'll only mention a couple. And also, to give another preface, I don't want this to particularly be any kind of lecture of sorts. If we want to learn more about these particular philosophers and what their theories were, what their ideas and concepts were, we can dive into that in our own time. I just want to bring out some very prominent principles and see how we can apply them in this Web3 shift, and do so by building community. So when it comes to Lao Tzu, he was known to be the father of libertarianism, and this isn't to get political by any stretch. It's more so just an offering of ideas of an example of how libertarianism has percolated and has grown as a hot topic in society today as we evolve with Web3. And what Lao Tzu would describe libertarianism as is minimizing the role of government while letting individuals develop spontaneously, as this to him would best achieve social and economic harmony. So we think about that. Okay, there's less government, let individuals do what they got to do, and hopefully there will be social and economic harmony. Sometimes you think if we're left to our devices, things get chaotic, and that's true. That's why I think rules are still quite necessary. But the reason why I do have an affinity to this style of thought is because I think that we will be more harmonious with ourselves because we have an inherent value for well-being. If you really were to boil down a concept, a broad concept like morality into its components, I think well-being would be at the core. What is right from wrong? Without getting too theoretical or hypothetical, I think it's, are you harming someone, or are you treating them fairly? And when it comes to libertarianism, it's just about letting people develop spontaneously, and they would do so in their own right, and without the need for rules. I think the specific example that Lao Tzu gives is that if you poke a fish, it's going to spoil. So just let the fish be. And if you also heard the quote, hurt people, I know it's a little bit cliche, but it could be ever so relevant in this topic, because sometimes when we do harm others, it's not because of the rules or restrictions that are placed on it, it's because of a sense of lack, and because we find that we need another means to an end when we can't get things by expressing our own freedoms. Yes, Joe, I was just going to mention that next is the DAO. This is just a quick little segue, not to digress too much, but the DAO is such a beautiful work. Oh my gosh, highly recommend it. That is something else that Lao Tzu, if not is more known for. But the DAO is essentially can be described in a few ways. It's the way, it's flow, and it's a way that we can create the stakeholder economy, if I may add. And the reason why I think so is because there are three principles to the DAO. They are simplicity, patience, and compassion. And with that, we need to realize that life in and of itself is so much more intelligent than we are, and we need to just let life take its course, and we just are the agents of our own action, not try to force anything. But this enables us to tap into creativity, tap into our intuition, tap into our flow states, and this way of just letting life be and not forcing is definitely one of acceptance and not of resistance. So going back to the libertarianism concepts, as mentioned, more rules. Well, Lao Tzu would say is that with more rules, more impoverished people will be. And I'm not trying to say that we need to go against old systems. I think there's an evolution of systems happening as we speak, a shift in economics and politics. However, I'm not for a collision of sorts. I really do believe we can find a symbiosis between systems. I'm not speaking of any kind of revolt of sorts. It's more so how can we work with the old systems to develop new ones and learn from what we've done in the past, because we evolve and we build momentum based on past experiences. So on that note, how does this refer to and relate to Web3, for example? Web3, what's been talked about so greatly with Web3, NFTs, crypto, blockchain, is the fact of scarcity. And I would actually disagree with this. I don't think scarcity is enough to measure value. While it's great that scarcity, you have deflationary assets such as crypto, it's definitely helpful to make sure that your purchasing power doesn't decrease over time with an inflated economy. I think it's more so about ownership. And that's what libertarianism is more about. It's not scarcity, it's about ownership. And ownership only matters when you have community. And this isn't about ownership as like a petulant child who's like, oh, I want my possessions and this is what matters to me, and I need to hoard as much as I can because I own it. It's not about that. Ownership really only means something when it's in the virtue of community, because then it's able to signify who owns what within this intertwined, delving, intricate web of transactions, of cooperations, of ideas, of concepts. And this is where ownership really plays its role, because everyone is able to know who gets their piece of the pie based on what they've worked on, and it's not being infringed upon. And this is where rules become very, some rules, at least to an extent, become very necessary. If I may also add a brief mention of scarcity to elucidate this point, it's that scarcity itself isn't enough, because if you look at Yeezys, for example, Yeezys have high retail value. You know, they're scarce. There's only so many that could be created. So of course, when they get off the shelves, they have you can resell them for so much more. There's only so many that there ever will be. And that's alluring of a concept. But if I, for example, were to create 5 shoes and put them out there, no one would give a crap, right? So scarcity itself isn't enough. It's the fact that you have scarcity with ownership in community is where it starts to matter, because now you've developed a cohort around these Yeezys. You've built a culture around it, and that's that's the essence of it all at the end of the day. And I think that that's what we're trying to do with these Web3 shifts in technology. On another note, when it comes to the concept of ownership, I do believe that we covet ownership because we lack identity. And this isn't to be pessimistic at all. I just think that we tend to lack to ideology when we don't understand ourselves, when we don't understand the world. So we attach to ideologies, political ideologies, even scientific ideologies. And knowing that there's something that can't be controlled or taken away is a very compelling value proposition. And that's where ownership plays a vital role in this next economy. So that was a little snippet of libertarianism. It's be able to be a free actor in a free market and have ownership. And those are the ways that I see it expressing itself in the economy. It's not about scarcity, ownership with respect to the entangled web of what others create in a free market and in a productive society as we work together and cooperate. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. So the next speaker I want to mention, it's very timely, or speaker or writer, if I may say, is Jean Baudrillard, if some of you are familiar, French philosopher, and he wrote the book Simulacra and Simulation. It's wild, if I may really boil it down. And this, if you guys didn't know, as a fun fact, is actually the book that inspired the Matrix series. And that's why I say it's so timely, because Matrix 4 is coming out, guys. I'm beyond thrilled. I hope you guys are just as excited. Excuse me, sorry. It's been almost 20 years in the making, one of my favorite series of all times. And they're coming out with a 4th one with Keanu Reeves. And I think we can go on a whole talk just about that. But what I want to say is that this is very timely, because Jean Baudrillard wrote the book Simulacrum and Simulation, which is actually referenced and noted in the first movie. And apparently, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard this before, that the Wachowski brothers, who are now the Wachowski sisters, had all the cast members read the book as part of learning their script and learning the underlying essence and concepts of the film. So that's why I think it works, and something that we need to look back at with ferocity and really delve into these concepts of what he calls, there are 3 different main concepts here. One of them is called the desert of the real. The other is the simulacrum, and the third is simulacra. So the desert of the real in the Matrix, if you've seen the movie, is referred to the real world. It's not the Matrix, it's not the computer systems, no spoilers, but it's the actual real world, and it's called the desert of the real, and the city that they denoted this as, or the world, was called Zion. And this was, and people would either be able to plug into the system, and people were able to identify once they were out of the system when they were in the Matrix as to when they were not in the Matrix. And the desert of the real is something that we covet so deeply today. We covet meaning. We need meaning in our lives. It's what influences our motivations. It's what motivates our behaviors. And sometimes we really don't know what the desert of the real is. We have such a conflated world with conflated ideas. We just don't know what is accurate these days. And I feel like it's something that we're truly lacking, and something that we can really search for. And this goes into the next point of the simulacrum. And the simulacrum is supposed to represent the real. So the simulacrum is a symbol of the desert of the real. So it has an underlying backing to it. It's the treasury, if you may, if you're familiar with Unit's ecosystem. But the simulacrum, to further clarify, is like me giving you a symbol or a logo of a soccer team, for example. And we find so much value. Symbols have played such a vital role in our human history. They've evoked so much emotion, for better or for worse. And one of the great reasons for this is because our brain deeply loves heuristics. We love to conserve energy physiologically, and with that, we love to boil things down into their constituent parts, just enough to be able to absorb and understand them through visual format, through audio format. So these symbols, they serve as heuristics for what they represent to us, for what they mean to us, for why it's sentimental to us, and the emotion that it evokes that corresponds with our lifestyles and how we want to cooperate, how we want to share community. And again, I think a soccer logo is an example, one that I can definitely attest to. I may or may not kiss a soccer logo of my favorite team when they score. You know, I'm just an avid soccer fan. That's part of what I do, but it just goes to show there's so many symbols out there, whether it's a rock star, a superhero, whether it's a literal visual of your brand, and it means so much to you because it's iconic of something that's underneath it. It puts it all together in a much more compartmentalized and packaged form. Now, the issue is when we get into the third point, and when we fall into what's called John Baudrillard, calls the simulacra. And the simulacra is a symbol for something that has no copies of the original. So there's really nothing to back this symbol. So it's like if I were to draw you a symbol right now and say it was of a soccer team and got you to invest your money into it and got you to buy in and got you to emotionally invest and build a team around it, but there was no soccer team there. There was just a symbol. I just showed you a symbol, and that's simulacra. And I think this is so pertinent in society today, because we attach ourselves to immediate information, right? And we just don't know how to validate what's accurate. We hear things on YouTube, we hear things on the news, we hear things from our neighbors, from our friends, and we don't know if it has any underlying cause. We really are not sure if it's reflecting a desert of the real or not. But gratefully so, when it comes to Web3, guys, we can finally pick the red pill. And this is what's so amazing. This is what's so beautiful. We've had this dissociation between trying to decipher which is the blue pill, which is the red pill. In the economy, for example, we don't know if something is a sound investment. We don't know if something has good business fundamentals. And now we can finally pick the red pill because of the choice and transparency that is at play. We never had the choice before. We had to adhere to the monetary policies, to the IOUs, to the printing, and everything above and beyond, because it was the only monetary policy that had us operating and being able to pay our bills, pay our mortgages, and so forth in each of our daily lives. So now we have the decision. We have a choice to make to choose the red pill. And that is, as you guys, I'm sure you know, is to dive into the rabbit hole and see how deep it goes, regardless of what those consequences might be, or live it in the dream world where the ignorance is bliss mindset comes to play. And hey, to each his own, right? Every choice can be valid if it really resonates with your true self. So something I want to mention that really comes from this being able to choose now. We have the ability to choose a red pill because we have another monetary policy, another monetary and economic model that's coming to play, where we have a transparent system that's reliant on ownership, that's built on community, that's not owned by a centralized bank when you look at cryptocurrencies specifically. And something that I don't see being talked about nearly as much, or there are a lot of arguments, for example, with Bitcoin about, oh, proof of work models are not as are very environmentally costly. And I think there's a huge conversation to be made there. And I think we should continue having these conversations and seeing how we can be much more environmentally friendly. However, what's not being talked about as much in these conversations when it comes to the desert of the real and efficiencies in the marketplace is, if we had a truly free market, do you know how many efficiencies would emerge in a completely free marketplace without zombie companies being kept afloat as a way to get more funds into an economy? If the Fed, for example, is printing more money and needs new ways to get it in there without just buying government bonds or company bonds, now the way to get money into the market is also through keeping zombie companies afloat that have no best business practice, that are not providing any real value to society, and that's costing energy. That's costing real energy in the market, is to keep these companies afloat and to keep them running. So I'm not sure what the actual metrics are, but I would assume that when you look at the entire global marketplace, the environmental cost of mining Bitcoin, for example, is not as much to keeping the companies afloat in the world that really are not providing any value for the human ecosystem, for our global economy as a whole, that are being kept afloat by centralized systems. So just something as another side note, I think we should be embedding more into these conversations. And now with the red pill, like I said, we can decide what initiatives we want to partake in, and we can decide now what we truly believe in, and look at this emerging tokenized economy where anyone can create a token and make a decision to say, that's something that I believe in, that's what I want to back, that's what I want to symbolize and represent, not just because it's my only option, but because I do have the choice. Some examples that I want to offer to further clarify, again, this concept of the difference between the desert of the real and the simulacra, where there's been huge discrepancies over time, is look at what happened at the beginning of COVID. It was mind-boggling. People were questioning, why is the market going up when the economy is tanking? It did not make sense. It was I heard these conversations constantly. It was like, oh, S&P 500, okay, S&P 500, just to note, I'm sure you guys know, but in case you guys don't, it's supposed to be the best reflection of the American economy. And it tanked. It tanked in March of 2020, but then it rebounded right away and it started hitting new highs. And people were shocked by this. People were saying, how is the market going up when the economy is going down? Our local mom and pop shops are closing down. The bakery that I go to is closed down. It doesn't make sense. It's not the best reflection of an economy. So what we've been told is the best reflection of the economy in the market actually wasn't. And COVID and centralized systems have been continuing to expose that. And we're starting to see this breach between the desert of the real and the simulacra. Another one is when you look at fractional reserve banking and money printing has distorted our visions of supply and demand. I gave the example at the beginning of the talk about buying a coffee, for example, right? I want to pay $2 for the coffee. You want to pay $2. Now, if a coffee is $4, I don't know if I'm really willing to pay that. And you could say that those are the emerging qualities of supply and demand, but those are distorted because of the inexorable amounts of printing that has taken place and the amount of loans that are being issued against people's means, beyond people's means. And I think this distorts real free market value of supply and demand. Just a further note, again, 2008 market collapse was another great example. As we've seen from the movie The Big Short, the default rates were going up and people were saying that the housing market was the bedrock of the American economy. And the repackaging of these assets were continuing to be defaulted on. So we're continuously seeing time and time again, monetary policy failing. But again, that's not to promote any kind of collision. I think we can work with current systems that are in place. I just want to be sure that we understand what the issues are in current policies so we know why we are really moving towards a more equitable economy, a more fair economy, and that is the stakeholder Web3 economy. So John Baudrillard, his book is Simulacrum Simulation. I believe it was 1971 or 81. Please correct me if I'm on which one it is, 71 or 81. Absolutely astounding works, and another one that I highly recommend getting into. So now we're getting into our third philosopher, and this is Soren Kierkegaard, another one of my favorites. I'm going to be honest, they're all among my favorites, so I'm going to keep saying that. And Soren Kierkegaard is a Danish philosopher who's known to be one of the first existentialists. And all existentialism really is, as a philosophy, is choice. The fact that you become who you are because of the choices you decide to make in our lives. And he represents this through a concept called non-existence to existence. It's very similar to Aristotle's potentiality into actuality. And he describes that it's in our choices that determine the future and abyss of a world that's full of potential. So our choices really do matter. He's very opposed to, I suppose, the deterministic type mindset that things will just happen and emerge as they do. And I think there's so much debate that could be had around that. I'd love to have future conversations about that. But in Kierkegaard's view, he would say it's your choices that determine your future. Direct cause and effect are what make these. And this is what's so relevant in our economy today, because now with libertarianism, the concept of having ownership in a free market, it's going to be the choices that really reflect what is it you're going to be buying into? What are you going to contribute to? What are you going to create? What life are you going to create for yourself and the community around you? Because these choices really do matter, and they do have consequences. So I wanted to say that because we do have the choice, to the extent of, I don't have that complete answer as of right now, and I'd love to, again, talk more about this, but we do have choices, and we're having more choices open up in this aperture of a marketplace where we can create freely without having many restrictions placed on us. For example, let's say government imposed restrictions or laws and rules that are huge barriers to entry from, let's say, getting from the lower class to the middle class. Now with a more equitable future, we have more decisions at play. And I really need to make this point, is that we can't take this opportunity for granted. This isn't just about making money. It's great that, yes, you could 10x, you could 100x your money on that NFT on OpenSea, you can buy Bitcoin and it can skyrocket, great. But that's not what this is about, because this is a chance to really shift the trajectory of our civilization into a much more equitable economy. That's the power that this has. The unit, for example, and everyone that's working on these tokenized projects in Web3 could be looked at in 200-300 years from now. I was like, wow, this is where things changed. This is where things shifted for human history. This is where people had a much more fair operating system. This is where people were really living the lives that they deserve to live. And they're able to do so because of the choices at play. And as we look into these past philosophers that have opened up this world of insights and wisdoms as to how to go about making these choices, like I said, you can delve further into the topics and the principles of these individual writers as you please. But I think it's very necessary to continuously look back at the writings of our ancestors, if you may, to be able to see what wisdom we can pick out, because this is a life-changing trajectory. I want to say that Kierkegaard also makes note of a concept called, no, it's not really called anything, but he describes what's called, what he says, sorry, is that perception and reality are actually both just as real. And the thing is, when you tie this to simulacra, sometimes the simulacra is just as real as the desert of the real itself. And this is what's so fascinating, is sometimes we don't know how to make a distinction between what is real. Sometimes we don't know that the perception, as Jabin here has said, is reality itself. And because the reason why it's reality is because we make our decisions, our motivations, our behaviors, our value systems, the way we have outlooks of life based on the perceptions and the inputs that we are retrieving on any given moment. So because he says that perception and reality are both just as real, there's an example of, let's say when you have a cup of water, it's a little bit empty right now, but you know when you have a cup of water, for example, and you put a straw in it and you look at it and you say, it looks like the straw is bent. It looks like it's crooked. It looked like the straw broke inside there. And that's just simply the refracting of the light. Now you would say that, oh, it's an illusion. It's an optical illusion per se. And the reality is that the straw is actually going right through the cup and is not moving at all. And you would be right to an extent. However, in Kierkegaard's view, when you merge these concepts of perception and reality itself, he would say that your perceptions are not lying to you. You actually are seeing a refracting of the light. You actually are seeing a bending of the straw itself. And to relate this to economy, this is what's creating our boom and bust cycles, right? This is what's happening where we're visualizing something. We see a sector of the market that's going really well. And then, for example, it crashes again, back to the 2008 market collapse, right? We're seeing this constant dissociation between perception and reality. And now we're able to take those and split them apart, because now we have a transparent ecosystem, again, a more economic model that allows people to view, to create, to cooperate, and build community around things that have real merit to them, that are not just about making money, because as we said, making money, scarcity, it's very face value. What's the community around it? What are the values that correspond with these ideas and ideals that you have for yourself and life? And this plagues society today because the perception of our market value is constantly distorted. And I want to mention that when we think of choices and freedoms, I think it's important to note that freedom is actually quite relative, where freedom is only exercised as much as one believes freedom can be exercised, where once we see an opening, we're curious about something, our freedoms allow us to express ourselves and the nature of life through various forms now, because we try to mirror ourselves and life in and of itself in the most accurate way. If we're constrained, and because we're self-aware, very gratefully so, we're self-aware, we will become disconcerted by our constraints and not feel like we're living life to the fullest extent, because we know that there's something more out there. We know there's a better way of going about things, and we want to reflect ourselves in our most true form, and we want to mirror life in its true form. And that's something that I believe. I think that we are life expressing life. And what we seek freedom because we know that fulfillment is somewhere in the forecast. So we just don't know what decisions will really lead us to that fulfillment. And now there's an aperture for more freedom to be extended through collaboration, creativity, and now the internet of value. So we're dissociating perception and reality, understanding right from wrongs, and now being able to align perception to reality. So what we do see is the true reality in and of itself. Now, to make sense of all these different systems and concepts, especially those in a philosophical matter, I think what becomes very apparent is what our value systems are. And I don't think a lot of us really evaluate what our personal value systems are. What are our modes and our metrics for making our own personal decisions, right? Money is great, because yes, it gives you your purchasing power on the things that you want in life and what you want to invest. But I don't believe it's most suitable to be the highest value in a value system, because again, as previously mentioned, money is just a means to an end. So what is the feeling that you're trying to get from money? What is the experience you're trying to get from the money? And these come down to your core values. What are the core values that you personally want to live by? And I think we don't reflect on this too much. And I truly encourage you, even if it's after this call, I'm not sure if you guys have another gathering, another team session with your individual teams as part of the master's program after this. I'm not sure if this completely closes it out, but I think it would be a great experiment and a great exercise for you to come together and just jot down a list of what are the values that you want to live by. And I think this will formulate the foundation for the tokens that you may want to create in the future, where it's not just about creating a business plan or just creating a concept because you're trying to solve a particular problem. Of course, that's great, and we need it in the market, and something that I would consider myself to be a huge proponent of. That's why I'm part of Unit. However, maybe we simply have an idea. Maybe we simply want to connect with people, and now we can create tokens as a matter of doing so to express this. They are the symbols. They are the simulacrum, not the simulacra. And now, to make sure that our value systems are aligned with our tokens, we need to know them for ourselves. I think we have an idea of what our value systems are. We're just like, yeah, it's about family, it's about compassion, want to be healthy. And these are all great. I think that they could be vague, but I really think it's beyond necessary to dive into what do you want to live your life by. I really encourage you to write down a few notes. I'll even share a couple of my personally. The way that I organize my value system in my life is I do a micro to macro. So for example, some of my micro ones are to be present and to be grateful. And some of my middle ones are to play music. Playing music is where I feel I am at my core self. It's where I feel centered. It's where I feel grounded. And it's where I can be able to tap into my creative flow states. And then on a grand scale, I really want to understand what the heck consciousness really is. I want to figure that out. I really believe that we can in this generation. And in doing so, I want to leverage emerging technology as a way to ensure the well-being of people. So these are some of my core values. And if you really, in an unequivocal manner, understand what your value systems are, then you will really catch yourself on your shit if you're trying to create a project, a business, a token that doesn't align with them. Because now when you look at your token project that looked like, oh, it was great. It looks like a great way to make money. A lot of people might get on board. It looks like a cool idea. But then you start to align this project, this business plan, this idea with your values, and they don't line up. I think it might be a bit of a tough go. And I think it's something that we really need to incorporate and understand deeper, because we will embed more passion, more fulfillment, and a deeper sense of purpose with what we want to create in the future when we understand our value systems that are at play. Another mention that I want to add, just as a side note, this isn't the fourth philosopher. We've already gone through the three, but as a fourth notable mention, there's an individual named Ken Wilber who has what's called the integral theory of consciousness. And he has four quadrants of human consciousness. And he describes the fourth one as cosmocentric thinking. And cosmocentric thinking is just the ability that we are able to appreciate and understand the sanctity of life and the universe itself, where it's not just about ourselves. And of course, we're all on personal growth journeys, but it's not just about living lives for ourselves. Neil Donald Walsh, he said that your life is not about you. It's actually about what you do for others. And I think that this is an interesting testament to this cosmocentric thinking, because when we sit back and appreciate life in and of itself, we feel that life is working for us and not against us. And this will be able to solidify our system of values, whether it's a hierarchy of values, whether it's a system that you work by. We have so many of these psychological tests. And as a psychology student, I've seen quite a bit of these. You have your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have your color schemes, and you have your personality tests like INFJ and so forth. And I think they do a decent job. And I reference Maslow's hierarchy quite a bit as a brief understanding of, okay, have I fulfilled physiological needs, psychological needs, and what does it take to get to self-actualization? However, these are too standardized. We're very robust. We're very, very complex as beings, and we need to make these decisions for ourselves. We need to create our own value systems to be able to ensure that what's our chief aim at the end of the day? Is everything that we're working towards really going toward the value system that we've created for ourselves? We're creating an internet of value, so they better well be based on our own passionate, deep-rooted, purposeful value systems that we can then share with others. The only thing that gets difficult with value systems in this intricate web that we call the economy is that sometimes value systems coincide and collide with each other. And this is where ownership and property rights come into play. So this can very well work itself out, being that we do things in a gratuitous manner and things that are aligned with our highest self. And what I believe is a great way to acknowledge or to try to visualize and embody this value system. If you don't know where to start, is just try to envision your highest self respecting other people. What does that person look like? What is that person doing to serve others? Even if it's holding a door. I'm not saying you have to become a full-blown philanthropist and create all these nonprofits or NGOs or anything of the liking, but what does your highest self look like when you serve others? What is your personal value system? I want to give an example of when I committed to my value system. And again, as I mentioned, as my micro value system, I'm all about being present, being grateful, and also smiling and laughing as much as I can. That's another one I didn't add. I have much more personal ones, but these are some of the broad ones that I may express. When it came to being present and grateful, there was a time about a year ago, I think it was November of 2020, and I come from a very musically inclined background. My family are all musicians, and as I've said, music has been a great solace for me in my life, something that I value in my second level, my second tier of my value system. And we have a guitar that's laying around the house, and I never really touched it, to be honest. I'm more of a drummer. That's my percussionist, if you may. That's been my go-to. That's what I've learned since I was a child, and that's what I've gravitated towards. But we have a guitar here. We do have a simple acoustic, and one day there was an individual, one of my mom's friends, who came over, who actually was a master guitarist. I see him as a master guitarist because he was spectacular at everything he touched when it came from Spanish guitar to acoustic, electric, whatever the case may be. So he was quite incredible. And he asked me one day, he said, "Hey, do you want me to teach you just a few chords?" And this was at a time when I was actually designing my value system. What is my micro? What is my medium? What is my macro? Not saying that you have to decide yours in this fashion, but this is just how I've organized it in my own head, at least, and what I can do to then serve other people with this value system. And I made sure in that moment, I remember, I think I was doing something like going to watch a sports game afterwards. I just wanted to go sit in my room and watch sports, or just throw on Netflix, or whatever the case was. I honestly just really wasn't feeling it. That was the truth of the matter. But if I say I have to commit to my value systems, and if my value system is being present, I'm being presented with an opportunity to learn another instrument that I may not have come across. And guess what? I just sucked it up. I decided to sit down, and I learned about 3 chords on the instrument. And now I consider guitar in my catalog of musical instruments. And now I play it quite frequently. And it was all because of that moment for me to just step back, be introspective enough to say, what are my values? And if I value being present, then I have to be present in the moment. I'm being presented with an opportunity, even if I don't feel like it, and I'm going to tackle it with ferocity. And I did. So I'm grateful for that. And it's just a testament to the fact that when you reiterate your value systems, when you be sure to commit to them, they do wonders for you, because then your problems seem so much smaller. All your problems and all your ideas and your goals, they really just revolve around a few of these systems that you design for yourself in terms of what you want to value and how you go about your life. For example, if you highly desire adventure. I'm not much of an adrenaline junkie personally, so it's not going to be in my value system. But if you go and you're traveling the world, maybe you're in Chile and Argentina, and you're seeing the beautiful landscapes, and you want to have a sense of adventure, and you want to go sky gliding, maybe if you really are committed to the fact that you desire adventure in your life, then you will tackle those opportunities just because you know that and you've established that for yourself. The commitment is what matters here. But these are all for you to create. Again, something I highly encourage, whether you do it in your breakout sessions with your team, or even after this call, or just as we lean into the holidays, as we look into the new year. What are your personal values? Is it something that I think are very important in life, that's for sure. And as we lean into this, another concept of philosophy, something that is my bread and butter, what I love so deeply about philosophy in and itself are the abstractions. And abstractions to me are how we understand everything. It's how we come up with ideas. It's the realm of the ideas and how we extract ideas from space, wherever they may exist or wherever they may be localized, and materialize them to experience them and embody them in our own lives. I view abstractions like air, where they're the medium of our interpretation. We need air, so that our light can come through and we can see visual information, and same thing with sound waves to retrieve audio information. I view abstractions in the same manner. You can't quite put your finger on abstractions, but they're so real. They're actually, I would argue, just as real, if not more real, than the reality that we are touching today. And the reason why I say that is, look at some of our belief systems. Look at how we feel in life. What about love and faith? These are so prominent to our core being. They're so prominent to our essence. When you look at concepts like love, there's no there's really nowhere to localize it. And that's the beauty of abstractions, is that it goes beyond our 3D nature. Our 3D nature only knows how to envision things in a linear manner, and to envision them in what they would look like in the space-time that we are experiencing right now. But the abstractions allow us to transcend this and allow us to look at new ideas in a new way without being indoctrinated by the current thought of our human physiology. So it allows us to go beyond that choice, which is where I would argue with Kierkegaard. And that's just something that I'm deeply intrigued in, and I hope that abstractions are something that can inspire you in your life, and just a way to think beyond the bounds of what you previously thought and pull from information. This is a very Plato-esque type of concept, where Plato was all about the ideas. He has his main concept, or one of his most renowned concepts, called the theory of forms. And this is where, for example, you have something like a triangle, but there's actually nothing that constitute an exact triangle. We just have expressions and sensations of a triangle. So something with 3 sides, it's an isosceles, it's equilateral, whatever the case may be. And my point is, I want to tie this back down to the Web3 economy. We have now the decision to make choices, to create ideas, to come up with tokens, to build communities, to cooperate with people around the world. And we can't just stick to the same type of thought processes that once were. We have to really think outside of our own boxes, outside of what we once conceived of. Try to go beyond even what you thought. And what are those mediums of interpretation that you want to explore in your life? What do you deem as a fulfilling life? And the abstractions, I think, are a great vehicle to doing so. And with the internet of value, we now have an arena to place your abstractions, because that idea that you may have had that wasn't necessarily a business or an organization, it can now be a token. You can now create a token without even having to create a company. This token is now a symbol of our ideas and of our values. And and it's just a materialized version of these abstractions that we've pulled out of thin air, because it's part of our creativity. It's an inherent part of our true selves and how we want to share and experience the world with each other. So if I may top it off with Unit, I know all of you here are familiar with Unit, being that we're part of a Unit Masters session, and Michael Healy did a great talk on Tuesday, further explaining Unit. And we have had many speakers in the past, Joe, for example, very recently doing a talk about Unit. And I just want to say that we really got to do this right, guys. You know, this isn't just a money-making opportunity. We have to do this right, because of what I fear in the future is that there might be an excuse to do this differently and in a less diplomatic way if we don't do this right now. If we're all just out there money grabbing and saying, hey, you know, this looks cool, I can add this to my portfolio, you know, that's completely fine. But what happens if we screw it up? What happens if we don't build the right communities? What happens if our protocols fail? What happens if we don't actually believe in each other and believe in what we're putting out in the world? A centralized system may very well, and when you look at human history, you know, don't neglect dominance and power that has occurred, and tyranny that has occurred over time. They might say, yeah, you know what, you guys tried Web3 and it was great, and you guys were able to have some fun and probably make your money while you're at it. But guess what? Now we're going to do things in a less diplomatic way. We're not going to allow you to have the choice because you guys screwed it up, whatever that may look like. So we have to do this properly. And the way that I see us doing this properly is building communities, doing exactly what we're doing right now in this call. We're building the communities as preemptively. It's not just a sales pitch. It's not just a concept to get people to come together to purchase something. It's about really building the community. And this is something that I pride myself in with Unit, is the community that's built around it. There's so many beautiful testaments, beautiful stories that I've come across for people who really want to get involved and really want to partake in this next economy and don't know how to do so. And I think as a Unit team, we pride ourselves in the fact that we value education. 3 of our 5 initiatives are based on education. And you can argue that all 5 of our initiatives are education. We have conferences, ventures, masters, university, and news. University, news, and masters are definitely educational platforms. That's what we're doing here today, trying to share ideas and concepts in this new token and stakeholder economy. But conferences and ventures are also another platform to educate people, to learn about how to develop your own token, for example, in the accelerator, like a ventures program, or hosting a conference, and or being a speaker at a conference, which any of us here can do. We're very open source. Anyone can write an article, anyone can partake in a conference, can join our master's program to create their own token if they don't know how to start, get involved in masters, which is what we're doing right now. And I think that the strength of community is a really great way to gauge if a Web3 organization is doing well or not. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of what are called shitcoins, and they're out there, you know, that's a reality. And one way that I would advise to just make sure that you're not falling to one of those traps, not something that I can confirm, of course, but make sure that you see that there's true community behind it. We've seen before what's happened with NFTs like Kings of Leon. They're a massive band and have a lot of fans, but now followers don't matter as much anymore. We've sold out in the Web2 economy where followers were able to translate to funds, where attention used to be the asset. Now attention is not as much the asset, because now it's about what are you creating and what are people extracting from an NFT that you put out there, from a token project, from a blockchain ecosystem, if you may. And the strength of community is really what it boils down to. So try to look at information on the co-founders, try to look at information on the rest of the community, because if it's just another coin that's getting pumped and dumped, you're falling into another scheme just like any other. And it's very difficult to track those. But like I said, something that I advise is make sure the community is there to back it, because the more people that are involved, the more the network effect is at play, and the more dissemination of information and hopefully accurate information can be involved. And I just wanted to say that a true decentralized free market now allows us to acknowledge real world value through our treasury function. If you guys aren't familiar, I know Joe has done a spectacular talk on this in our last cohort, but just to briefly reiterate, what we're doing is creating an all-in-one hub. So we're a token builder, but we also have a decentralized finance mechanism. And what we're able to do is if you create your own token, you automatically have access to your own operational bank and your treasury to place funds into, so that all of your tokens are backed by real reserve assets, which are in the form of crypto, which we're calling blue chips of this industry, which are the Ethereums, the Kusamas, the Cardanos, the Bitcoins, etc. And I believe we're allowing 8 as of right now on our platform. So it's an all-in-one hub, and this decentralized market allows us to ensure that there's real world value and it's fully transparent. You know who owns the tokens, how much money is in the treasury, and something that I find really interesting, that I don't have the answers to right now, or how we're actually going to evaluate metrics for tokens in the future. And I find this so fascinating, because when you look at a stock, or when you look at the current market as it is, you see that, what influences market behavior. Okay, gold acts as a safe haven when the market gets a little bit risky. And when you want to evaluate a stock, you might check out its dividends, its price earnings ratio, its beta, its cash flows, its free cash flow. And these are all metrics to decide, okay, am I going to invest in this company? Now, when it comes to the token economy, we may have a whole new range of metrics. It might be token, it might be community building. How much has their community been growing over the past fiscal year? It might be how much has their treasury grown per month or per quarter. And the treasury will be a form of good business practice. And now that we have actual reserve assets in the treasury, it's able to show that there is value being accrued over time, and now it's being evenly distributed by all of the token holders. So this isn't just creation of wealth, it's also redistribution of wealth, which is shown to be a huge issue in capitalism and the economy today. And this is just that evolution of it. And hopefully we can create that together. I did see very briefly that there was a mention of elucidating the concept of the Ventures program. Very well, I can do so. So what we're planning to do is in our first batch in January, we're planning to host an accelerator program called our Ventures Launchpad. And what we do is we're accepting 100 token projects, and we're trying to give them a jumpstart, give them a kickstart into what is the best business practice creating their token. So is it for those that want to understand, what is the supply? What kind of reserve assets do they want to hold? Where do they access community? How do they retrieve funds? It's sort of like a business model for the token economy. And we really need to be prudent about this. We want to make sure that we do so effectively and we don't fall into traditional systems or traditional models, because I think there's an effervescent flow of so many more metrics that we can do to gauge these token economies, out of which I'm so excited, as you can see, I'm sure, about. And I'm so excited to see the tokens that you guys may come up with in the future, and how you guys decide to value them, and how they can be valuated. So if there's anything else I can clarify, I'd love to, like I said, open this to more of a communal discussion. And how do you get involved in the accelerator program? So first, we have a batch 1, and it's a 10-week program, just to be more clear. And it happens, we have our second batch that'll be happening in April, soon after our first 10 weeks. So we're starting in January, 10-week program going through. We're going to see we're going to try to work out the kinks. A lot of these are tester tokens right now, a lot of them coming from our team that want to build tokens, just to make sure that we're doing things properly, and what is the most effective way to go about it. How can we automate the process? Because there's only so many people we have on the team and so many projects that we want to have within the year. And then we want to be able to reiterate for batch 2. So if you want to get involved for batch 2, we have an application process that's being written as we speak. It's actually being consolidated within the next week or so. And we'll be sharing that with our community at the beginning of Q1 next year, so you guys can get involved in batch 2, which starts in April, if you want to build your own token and learn about the best way to go about it. So if there's anything else, again, I can clarify, please let me know. And I'm not sure of any questions or notes that I may have missed, but it's been beyond a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. And we get to really create this stakeholder economy together. This is This is really cool. I'm so honored. Thank you.
That's so awesome, Anthony. Thank you so much for sharing. You got us all pumped. I can see smiles, and like there's been comments coming through to me as well, directly about the stuff you're talking about. Very deep, and something we need to ponder about, right? Like we're shifting into a whole new era. This is the last mentoring session for cohort 7, guys. Give yourselves a round of applause. This is amazing. You made it through the end. So woohoo on that note. We will be having the next master's program kickstarting in Jan, and that's going to be on the 17th of Jan, but we will be doing an info session that's going to happen on the 9th of Jan. So after everyone's done with the Christmas holidays and New Year, shenanigans, we'll be back teaching people, or sharing with people on what Web 3.0 is going to do for us and as a society. So tell your friends, if any of you have people that are deeply curious about the fundamentals of blockchain and crypto, right? Like get them on board. We'll be sending out emails to all of you and all our past master students to keep you informed on that and on the date. So you'll have the links for everything. Anthony, that was absolutely fantastic. This is actually taking us to we've got about 8 minutes before we close. So I'd love us to go into breakout rooms. If everyone could just reflect on, this entire 6-week program, right? It's been great. You guys have been such troopers. Some of you did ask me, that it's been a really busy month and it's been hard to get your assignments and quizzes done and dusted. I got a couple of messages. Don't worry, take till the end of the month. We know it's been, it's a month that everyone gets super busy, just from family obligations to getting certain things that we wanted done at the end of the year done. So we totally understand that. Take till the end of December, submit your quizzes, your assignments, and hopefully you guys will get your certificates off the back of that. Yay. All right, so we'll go into breakout rooms. We'll take some time to spend together, reflect, share insights, and then come back in and just wave each other goodbye, wave each other a good end of the year, wish each other a good end of the year. I wish we could do a group hug, but we can't. So it's going to be a virtual round of applause and a big hug. All right. Okay, so let's get into these breakout rooms and share a little bit.
Thank you so much, Anne.
Thanks, Anthony.